You probably want your website to be accessible to all users, that's including users using assistive technologies like screen readers. And one way to achieve better accessibility is to use ARIA landmark roles. Landmark roles are defined in the ARIA specification, and there are 8 of them. The banner, complementary, Contentinfo, form, main, navigation, region, and search. You will find the link to this specific page in the video description, and we will go with a simple example through each of them. We may think that it's easy to achieve proper landmarks in our HTML structure, but you will see that it's sometimes tricky, and you have to know the tricks to give the proper semantics to your DOM structure. On this page, you will find information about each of the landmarks. And what's interesting is that if you click on this toggle button, you will have landmarks on this page highlighted. So we have a navigation, a banner, a main, a complementary. Let's start by making sure we are on the same page and check our DevTools. So I will right-click my page, choose Inspect, and you're probably used to the DevTools. I can see the classical DOM tree, and if I click this button, the Accessibility Tree button, I will switch to the Accessibility Tree view. And if you can't see this button in your DevTools, you can click here to get the accessibility menu. So my DevTools are in French, but you should be able to find easily the ones in your language. When you clicked accessibility, you have this first element for the accessibility tree with this small beaker icon, and you can click it to activate the full page accessibility tree. So mine is activated. You can deactivate or activate, and as you can see, if you activate it, you probably will need to restart your DevTools or restart Chrome so it becomes visible. So I will refresh the DevTools and I have my accessibility tree. If I activate it, I now have the accessibility tree view, and let's for a moment fold everything back. What we see here are the various landmarks. So we have a banner, a navigation, a main, complementary, there are 2 of them, and a Contentinfo. So now we know how to get the accessibility tree. Let's open our page builder and try to build something that looks like this with proper landmarks. So I'm in Bricks. I've created a page named landmarks. I will open it. You will see it's completely empty. So one way to define a role to an element is to use the role attribute. So we can go to attributes, add an attribute with a role, for example, a role of banner. And this is something that is completely feasible, but that's not the best way of doing it. So what we will try to do together is to follow the first rule of ARIA. And the first rule of ARIA is the following. If you can use a native HTML element or attribute with the semantics you require already built in, instead of repurposing an element and adding an ARIA role or property to make it accessible, do so. So according to the first rule of ARIA, the best way to go whenever it's possible is not to use ARIA attributes. And the good news is that we have, for most of the landmarks, HTML element with the built-in semantics for the proper landmark. So let's get rid of this div. And to start with the banner landmark, we have an HTML element, which is the header element. And I can insert a header element. And you will see this is the first trick when using bricks. So by using OxyProps structure builder and choosing the header, what I did is that I inserted a section, and this section was automatically inserted with the tag of, and it's not even there. So I need to go with a custom tag, and it's a custom tag of header. Okay, so if you don't own OxyProps yet, you can do this way. Otherwise, just insert a semantic header. Perfect, and now inside of my header, just for demonstration, I can insert a text. Let's save. And let's have a look at the front end. Here we are, we have our text, and if we inspect and activate the accessibility tree, we can see our header here, but the bad news is that it's marked header as non-landmark. And this is because the way Bricks is organized, the rule for a header to be an actual banner landmark is to be placed at the top level of your element. And as in Bricks, I did insert my header in my page, it's by default included in a main element, so it's not at the top level of my document. So this will not work. Okay, so back to our page. Let's get rid of it. And we will start in our dashboard, because if we want to achieve proper landmark, we'll absolutely need to use Bricks templates. So let's go to templates and we will add a new template. This will be my main header. I will select the template type of header, publish and edit. Okay, if I get this invalid post type, maybe this happened to you. I need to go to my settings, permalinks, and I will make sure I have the correct settings. My structure was updated. So hopefully if I go back to Bricks, templates, and now try to edit my template with Bricks, this time it works. Okay, so now I'm editing my template, and the good news is that I don't need to add a header element because Bricks will automatically by default output a header element. So let's imagine we are building inside our header element. So I will insert a container because I want my site to be limited in width. I will add a paragraph of text. This will simply be my site title. I'm typing the dynamic tag, but of course you can get it from the menu. And we are not focusing on design today, but so it is readable, let's add some block padding. Okay, and for now that's it. And with this, let's go to our front end and inspect our structure this time. Switch to the accessibility tree. And this time we have a banner landmark. Perfect, that's what we wanted to achieve. So remember, you can use a header HTML element, but to get the proper landmark, it must be top level in your document DOM, in your document structure. And in order to achieve this in Bricks, you have to use a header template. Now we will stay at our header level and we will add a navigation landmark and a search landmark. Imagine at the top of our site, we want a header and we want a top navigation and we want a search box to search our site. So back to the editor, still inside my container, I will go to grouping content. I will add a nav because nav, the HTML nav element, is the element that carries the semantic meaning for the navigation. And let's quickly build a classical navigation. I will add to my nav an unordered list. I will add a list item and I will use the wrapper because inside my item I want to add a link. Okay, let's make it a single word. Perfect. I will duplicate my list item a few times. Let's make our list a flex row. Give it a gap of 4. By the way, let's make our container a flex row with space between items to push our navigation to the right side. And even if we are not focusing on style, let's get rid of these list markers. So let's check now our accessibility tree, and if everything was as expected, we should see a navigation landmark. And that's perfect, we have a navigation. The one we see at the bottom is the WordPress admin bar, and it is labeled toolbar. On your site, if you have a single navigation, you don't have to label it. It can be simply a navigation landmark. But as soon as you have multiple navigation, each of them must be uniquely labeled. Now, in our top navigation, we want to add a search field to search our site. So the quick way is to use the OxyProps menu and to go to the semantic elements. And in the forms list, let's expand it, and we want a search form. And inside of our search form, we will add a label and we will add a search box. Let's make this once again a flex row. Align items center with a little gap. Perfect. And why did I say that this is the fast way of doing it? Because in OxyProps structure menu, everything is already done for you, because we don't yet have a search HTML element. It's in the future specification, so we'll have it someday, but for now, the only way to have a proper landmark for the search landmark is to insert a form. So that's what I did here, because my element has a tag of form, but it also has an attribute. That's not the name, that's the role. It has a role, and I will move my head so you can see my element is automatically inserted with a role of search. So if you don't have OxyProps structure menu, you need to insert a div, change its tag to custom to get a form, and then go to the attributes and add an attribute with a role of search. Okay, so this can be done completely manually. It's just a question of time. And you save this time with the structure builder. And by the way, other attributes are already done for you. So let's save and jump to our front end. And we can see that we now have a landmark of search. So we have our banner, navigation, and search, which all are the proper ARIA landmarks for our elements. And by the way, let's just check if our search works as expected. And I will display the address bar so we can have a look, and let's, of course, the site is empty, but let's say that we search for bricks, and we can see that our search box is functional because it opened the address bar with the proper query string. Perfect. So as we are on the accessibility tree, we can see that we have the main landmark here. So we are finished with our header, with our template, and the banner landmark. Now we will work on the main, and we cannot decide where to place the main. That's Brick way of doing things. Everything we place on our page will be included inside this main landmark. In my opinion, that's not the best way. That's not how I would like it to work. I think we have much more flexibility with using a builder like Oxygen, for example. But we have to do with bricks and the way it handles things. So everything in our page will be part of the main landmark. So let's get out of the template and open our page. So we can see that our header is applied, of course, to our site. And everything we will add to our page will be included in our main. So the next two landmarks we will explore after main is first the region. and then the aside. So what is a region? For example, on our page, we could have an H1 element, which will be the main heading for the page with a paragraph. And then on our page, we can have different areas with different type of content. And to create a region, we have an HTML element that will help us, and this is the section element. But there's a trick. So let's start by inserting a section, and in my section I can have a H2, with text, and then I can have another one. With a different heading and a different text. So as we inserted sections which are sectioning elements, sections with the proper tag of section, and headings, we could expect these to be identified as region landmarks. But let's have a look and we will see that it's not the case. So let's inspect, display the accessibility tree. We see that we have our section elements, both sections elements, but they are not identified as region landmarks. And this is because if we look at the specification, it states that a region landmark must have a label. So using the HTML sections element to define a region landmark, it needs to have an ARIA labeled by attribute. So this means that we need to link the section to the heading in order to be properly identified as a landmark. So let's have a look. So let's select my section. Actually, no, first let's select my heading. My heading has an ID. So I will copy my ID, go to my section, and add to my section an attribute of ARIA labeled by, and let's include the value, the ID, without the hash sign. Save and check. And you can see that now my section has become a region and it's labeled by my heading. Okay, so when inserting a section, it's not enough to insert a section and have a heading inside the section. You must link your section to the heading with an ARIA labeled by attribute. And now, once you have done this once, it could be tempting to just duplicate the section, because you probably will have several sections on your page, and then modify my heading. But if we do this and check our accessibility tree, we get a problem because I have 3 regions, but all of them are labeled by my first heading. Because when duplicating the section, Bricks already duplicate the heading, keeping the ARIA labeled by attribute linked to the heading of the first section. So if you duplicate your section, you need to take time to go to each individual section and change the attribute and replace this value by the new attribute of the duplicated heading. A faster way to do this is once again to use OxyProps structure menu. And if we go to the menu, to the components, we have section plus headers here. And if I click on this, it will insert a section with a heading, and it will automatically link the heading and the section together. And if I insert another one, and I change the heading to make it obvious, Let's save. Let's even add a third one. And check our accessibility tree. Perfect. I have 3 regions, each of them labeled by the proper title. The next landmark is used for something that is somehow related to your page content, but that can live on its own. It's something aside the main content. And it uses the complementary landmark. So we have the aside HTML element that will help us achieve this landmark. So what we can do, for example, I will insert a simple div to my page. I will make my div a right sidebar. I will insert a first div and bring everything inside it. And let's add an aside. Just to make it more readable, I will add a gap. And in my aside, I can add a basic card, for example. Here we are. Let's check the front end. And when refreshing our accessibility tree, we now have a complementary landmark for our sidebar. I wish we had a way in Bricks to get our complementary landmark outside of the main landmark, but it's not possible. Even if you use Bricks sidebars with widgets, it will not output a complementary landmark on the front end. So maybe that's something for future updates of Bricks. And we have 2 landmark categories remaining. So let's go now with the form landmark. And once again, we have a form element. So we could imagine that inserting a Bricks, simply a Bricks form, the basic form that Bricks gives us, would generate a form landmark. So let's check. And we have our form, but strangely, it is identified in the accessibility tree as a section. So once again, this is similar to what happened earlier with the section HTML element and the heading. In order for our form to be correctly identified as a form landmark, it needs, I will take it outside of my layout, and we can add an H2. It's a contact form, so simply contact us. Let's copy the element ID, go to our form, add an attribute, ARIA labeled by, paste the ID without the hash sign, save, and check now if our section is transformed to a proper, and here we are. Our form is now identified with the proper form landmark, and it's labeled by our heading, Contact Us. So it's important. It may seem not intuitive at first. You have to know this, but once you know it, you can make sure that your HTML structure gets the proper semantics. Once again, the fast way to achieve that is to use the structure builder. And if you look inside the components form, you have for now 3 different versions: a login form, an action panel form. So for example, if you need a login form, we can insert it, save, and check on the front end. Our form is properly identified with the form landmark, and we get a functional user login form for your site. So let's recap the landmarks. We have the banner, we have the navigation, the search landmark, the main, the region, the complementary, and the form. So we have 7, we have 1 missing, and the 1 missing is the content info. What is the content info landmark for? And the content info landmark is a way to identify common information at the bottom of each page. So typically it's the footer of the page. As it's the footer of the page, you can imagine that the HTML footer element carries the content info landmark semantics. And in the same way as the banner landmark, we will need to use bricks templates. So let's go back to our dashboard. Because the content info needs the footer element to be at the top level of our document in order to be identified as the proper landmark. So if I include it in my page, it will not get the correct landmark. So let's go to bricks, templates, add new. I will create my main footer. This will be a footer. And let's make it very simple. I will use a container once again to limit the width, and inside of it I will insert a paragraph. I can make my container a column and center my elements. Add some block padding. So our text will be copyright, curly brackets to call dynamic data. We'll use current date, and we want the year. And we will call our site title. Okay, let's save. And for last time, check our front end. Okay, so of course the page is ugly. This video is not about design, it's about proper structure and semantics. We have our footer. Let's have a look at the structure. And if we check our accessibility tree, we now have our content info landmark for our footer. So we finally have a page structure which is semantically correct and uses all 8 landmarks to identify properly each area of our page. And this is how you can get proper semantics using ARIA landmarks with HTML elements following the first rule of ARIA, which is limiting to the strict minimum the use of the ARIA attributes and taking advantage of HTML elements and the intrinsic semantics they carry. I hope you find this video helpful. Leave me a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.